Boom, we are alive, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be going over Ethereum, Bitcoin, just some more market conjecture and the understanding of what Nassim Taleb dubbed the black swan. I think you should always build for the understanding that the nature of the universe can seem quite random, and how one prepares for that, or how one can prepare for that. There is no one size fits all for anything in life. So because some of these things are so kind of customizable, we're going to dive in and share at least my sentiments on what I do in situations like this and how I try to prepare for the long term instead of thinking on a much more ancillary short term basis. So we're going to dive in and we're taking a look at Ethereum. The reason why I like to start with Ethereum now over Bitcoin is because I believe Ethereum effectively sits in much stronger market makers' hands. The reason why I believe that in my comparative analysis against Bitcoin and Ethereum is that this very personified, this very exemplified version of a buying climax, a distribution phase, and then a reaccumulation period is so powerful. Because what we're trying to do is effectively hunt something in the wild, right? Like a wild animal. Now, every time any animal shows up, it's slightly different. So the footprint isn't exactly the same, but seems to be relatively close. So there's always the potential for downside, right? You know, we'll just add some things in the story. Oh, someone's got a bomb, or there's an explosion, or there's a big floods. There's always something in the macro story that piques human nature. Now, there are a few things that could send us right off the cliff into basically Mad Max world. Let's just for now not assume we're going to go there, even though I have boxes of seeds in my fridge. And for any of you that have seen the movie The Big Short, I believe I agree with Ben Rickard here that seeds are a type of currency, and what the other guy, he invests in water, right? Yeah, so I have both of those things. Let's not assume that we're going to go all the way to Mad Max world quite yet. They keep printing money to some degree or another, and they inflate the system. Everyone does it. All the countries, they all will have to take loans out and just inject capital into the system, and it's somewhat relative. So when we're out in the wild and we're identifying this footprint, the wild is actually what gives it its character, right? The difference in one person or another is their character. So in Ethereum, its character, it's like presence in the ground right now. It's this footprint that we're witnessing versus Bitcoin's character. Here, I've drawn up on this one. Oh, it's not on this computer. I always forget that I do a lot of charts on the laptop as well. Okay, there we go. Yes, I did save it. Nice. Okay, let's compare these two, right? So I'm just going to take my time. We're in no rush here. What I want to do is comparative analysis. So this is kind of a strength indicator. It's comparing the footprint or the fingerprint of each of these plays. And we'll use Binance token and maybe even BAT and Algorand, because Algorand has some very strong technology behind it as well. Or at least I'm told. I can only trust people that are smarter than me, and I'll just believe you. You're good. We'll go with that. Because I don't actually know. I'm not even going to pretend to know. I'm not a technologist. All I am is like a money data scientist. I'm following the consciousness of financial movements through these very simple idealizations of something as simple as what a cloud does. Accumulates and distributes. So here in Bitcoin, this really big blow-off top, hypodermic tops, and this accumulation phase. Now, the first accumulation phase was actually back here in 2018, 2019. It basically started the first automatic rally. So now, knowing what we know, it was obvious we weren't in a bull market. If we'd seen this, we'd know, oh yeah, we'd need a spring still. You would have technically been able to see that a pandemic or something was coming, even though we didn't know what it was. And that to me is one of the most fascinating things about this, is because the character of each of these footprints shows up through the nature of the universe. It doesn't just show up like because people are selling and large market indicators are buying it. Something happens in the world to make these things, at least in the mind of the individual, appear. So here is the pandemic. This was our next spring or spike downwards. This was the selling climax in phase C. So here, when we're coming down the distribution, this big area is accumulation. Now, Bitcoin could actually come much lower here, right? We could see an SOS, or what might even be a minor SOS, and a big retest of a bottom. And we could even see that bottom would maybe be coming from something like this, right? This regression trend line that we follow with so many of our other plays. So Bitcoin, Bitcoin in the long term is the alpha. Let's just call it that. Bitcoin in the long term, I believe, is the alpha. The reason I'm using Ethereum as my current alpha, or at least market indicator, not the alpha, let's just call it the indicator, is because the footprint is significantly more reliable. In Bitcoin here, what I believe we're witnessing, and this big move is, first off, it has a lot of juice in it. When Bitcoin moves the next time again, it could go hundreds of thousands of dollars very, very quickly. These are limited supply. Like, this is a collector. We're looking at digital collector's items. Like, we can just, let's simplify it. There's only so many Bitcoin. You can own a part of a Bitcoin, but it's a giant original, like, Beanie Baby on the internet. Anyways, and that's a little bit of an insult to how cool the technology is and what it actually answers with these Byzantine ideas. But let's just simplify things for a moment, right? Buying climax, accumulation. So as we've seen with there could be a big chunk of supply inside of Bitcoin here. So it could take longer to actually get its full momentum. Whereas I believe with Ethereum, we actually have a clear entrance into the bull market, right? So we are witnessing these moves in the entire sector, right? And this is what becomes the interesting part is, okay, well, let's do other comparative analysis of where we are in this sector. Because again, remember, market man or comp man, the like godhead of trading, we envision him as like the personified single individual that just like always kills it in the markets. Well, how do they do that? They invest in a lot of things in the sector. So Binance here is another one. Now, we could be witnessing, we could witness something big here where everything falls back down. Like it's very easy to chart that we're actually not in new highs. So this upwards regression line here with Binance token will become super important, like this one here, getting above the all-time high. Right, so the long-term play of Binance right now, we could clarify that we could probably see into the future to some degree. That's what always the difficult part about investing is well, look, if you're let's say you're the community shaman or something, right? And you're trying to help the community understand what technologies are going to be coming and which ones will be successful so that they can keep up, right? That's like what we're doing. But that means you have to see the wheel coming. You're like, oh, there's no wheel yet, but there is a wheel coming. So how far away are you from actually being able to invent the wheel itself, right? So Binance is making a very clear, strong move to pivot into the more decentralized space while still maintaining the community that they've been able to build through more centralized infrastructure at the beginning of its idea, right? So they're going to a decentralized index, a launch pad, a liquidity pool that's all built in with a Binance Smart Chain, and it closes faster, it costs less, and they're making the only play they have left. So Binance could actually become a very strong market leader because of how focused they are on that community that they've done a good job at, right? So the Ethereum community is extremely powerful as well, but I'm not going to bet against the Binance community. He's done a great job. Like, I wouldn't bet against Elon Musk. Whatever you want to drill holes? Great. Drill some holes. Sounds like a great idea. I don't know. Smarter than I am, sure. Right? So again, my interest here is my long-term thesis, why I showed up to the marketplace, is because I bet that I could be able to predict to some degree or another the wheel before it was coming and become a part of that action based off a few things. That number one, you cannot remove consciousness from the experiment. We are all a part of it. So if then that is my operating thesis, can I not then see some type of human nature in the markets? And that's what this accumulation and distribution idea represents. So I can hypothesize into the future that Binance is actually going to make it above this trend line, close above it, and continue up potentially as well, because we're looking at small liquidity pools and the growth of an ecosystem. And Market Man wants to bet on a bunch of things because he knows long term, 5-10 years from now, he doesn't ultimately know what happens. So he invests on a much bigger time spectrum than any one of us can. This footprint over 100 years has never changed. The idea of a cloud accumulating and distributing has never changed. So all we're doing, whether we're investing now and the really crazy part about this is that as venture capitalists focusing on black swan like events where you can enter into the, say, seed stage area of Twitter, something like this, what we're given the opportunity of is to find the footprint of conscious capital, effectively, for better or for worse, right? Again, we don't know what these companies end up doing. We're just following money. That's all we're trying to do in this chart. That movement, even though it's on a smaller market cap, still looks the same. And that's what was fascinating about Fetch. And this is what is fascinating about Fetch, right? Is, well, in the big markets, it makes sense. It's easier. The liquidity is significantly higher. You can play the game. You can move more money around. Here, you can't even you can't put $100 million into Fetch, right? You need to broad spectrum the approach throughout the entire sector. And that's what I'm saying Comp Man is good at. And that's, if you want to play this game, how do you practice the meditation of seeing the way the market sees it, not the way the individual sees it? Because from an individual standpoint, none of us have even lived long enough to be around for how long this thing has worked. That's crazy. That means it will continue to work for a lot longer. We have found a way to chart human nature. So even though Fetch was like, I think $25 million in its market cap, it presented the exact same footprint. Now, okay, there are variations, right? So we can go back. Let's analyze the strength of these, right? So that's what we're trying to do. We're talking about what we're witnessing, but we want to analyze the strength so we can tell what our play is going to be. So I made a mistake. And it's a mistake that's actually pretty easy to make, and I don't blame myself for it. But it's a pretty easy mistake. Oh, right. There's a minor scale, right? There's a minor and a major scale to pretty much everything in life. Like as a painter, you've got your colors, your three major colors, right? You can paint most things with red, blue, and green if you're good at color mixing and matching, right? Or you can have a broader spectrum, like 7 color painting brush that you can use. So we actually have minor and major signals in the market that are represented, I think, by the strength of the last points of supply. So here with Fetch had really strong hands during Bitcoin's previous drop right here. And then we had a little chunk go. They're like, market man was like, okay, well, let's see how low we can dip it, right? So where Algorand actually came all the way back down to the bottom of its regression line, or second bottom of its regression line, we see that Quantum, I think, came to the second bottom of the regression line too. So what I've been doing is I've been charting this kind of rainbow essence of how I can figure out, was this a minor or a major SOS, right? Because there are clear movers, like when we were charting waves, that once it broke out of the box, we had even this small SOS here was very hard to tell that it was how long this backup would last before it exploded. It was very small, right? So some of them have this strength. So what we're also trying to do is find this moment when the strength exists in the market so that there's very limited exposure time for those of you that are operating with smaller capital. For bigger capital, or just from the investor sentiment as a general, we want to recognize this entire space, because this is where the value of limited supply and demand works like a charm. It's pretty fascinating to me. So in other plays, though, as we saw, let's use BAT, another great example of what I believe is a minor SOS. It came out to test the top of the box, but still had a lot of weak hands in supply. Now, I could very clearly make conjecture around the reason this exists is that BAT's been a more consumer-facing product. It's easier for those types of people to get their hand on it. Where something like Fetch, which is still in very strong hands, it was very unlikely that people would even recognize what this is unless they're weirdos like me who trip out on the Binance research forum every now and then. And so what I think the only macro you really need to care about is the technology. Because the micro here, what's important is the supply and the demand. That's it. Nothing else matters. There's no macro story that can disrupt that. Not once it's moving. Not once the supply is gone. But what we can really do to arm ourselves is understand the micro of the technology. So I bought some Sushi swap. Now I'm not even going to look at the chart, but I just want to kind of riff on something, because what I like about ideas like Fetch, and what I think is so fascinating about this entire sector, is that as a let's say basically as a novice investor, someone like me, right? I'm a novice. I've only been managing my money, right? So my point is that I can now act as the way you would if you were working for a fund right out the gate. Lots of people can. Anyone can that has pretty much an internet access, right? Because you can invest to some degree, even, and this is where the speculation lines differ. You can at least participate. Let's say this. You can participate in the network effect and the growth of that supply and that demand based off its use inside these kind of closed loop or entropic systems. So something like Sushi Swap or Uniswap, what's unique about this idea is that, well, let's say I want to be a hedge fund. Let's say I want to be a big market operator, and I want to have access to proprietary deal flow like Fetch. By taking part in the liquidity pool, I can stake and earn off whatever new projects are launched. That's an extremely valuable thing. This is one of the things I think that isn't always so commonly recognized about the DeFi space, is that we are able to accommodate a lot more wealth into this ecosystem, right? Okay, well, cool. Bitcoin's a money. That's cool. But you know what's really cool and valuable? Products and services that change the way we do the way we live on the planet for better, hopefully, right? That's what we would like. So can you make the participation and the network effect of that participation of these things what becomes your payment? So you're not actually investing, you're participating, and you're being rewarded for your participation, right? Not like, oh, you don't, not so much, oh, well, who matters? Like, did you get number one? Like, were you the CEO or the founder? Or did you get these bigger liquidity pools? And that's why the argument around Sushi Swap is that, oh, he's a scammer, he just ditched everything. No, good. That openly aggregated the liquidity pool for other people to start buying it. Now, what you don't want to do necessarily is buy Sushi, but you want to be able to participate. So even if you don't know what you're doing, just don't put anything big in. Learn how to participate in these things, because this is venture capital where from people around the world are investing in an AI company online through participation. Let's leave it like that, because then it's not invested. Let's just remove the whole word investing from our thesis here and say you are able to participate in the network growth of something by becoming a part of that story. Now, I know it's an abstraction, but it's the easiest way to explain it, because value is speculative, right? Clearly, just meditate on it. How paintings are worth sometimes how much versus what? Okay, well, that's speculative. Okay, so value is a speculation based off kind of a mass hallucination, during the fact that we're all privileged enough to even have that hallucination right now, for the most part, or at least the ones, so I don't want to go too far off tangent here. But again, what I'm excited about is that this whole sector represents a more easily accessible financial landscape for everybody. And it costs us less. It's massively deflationary. It's going to it'll create a massive amount of abundance over the next, who knows how long. We might see technology outpace even the need for like a real money. Because what if you have infinite energy, or you can just produce energy at a significantly higher rate than we have now? So this movement, like let's I'm tripping out way in like 2040 or 2050, so excuse me, I got a little bit ahead of myself. But what I've always liked about this sector is that what used to be in the hands of only the financial elite is in the hands of the everyday people again. You can participate in what used to be proprietary dealership only, right? Which is, you can find stuff on Uniswap. You can take part and participate in the growth of the new ecosystems. This type of stakeholder capitalism, the need for like zebras in an ecosystem instead of just unicorns, because bears the weight through the many instead anyways, and that way everybody gets more, I think is our long-term, probably the only way we survive through this anyways. So this represents something to me that I'm very much interested in, and why I like this, not from a monetary perspective, but for what it offers conceptually, right? Because look, I think it would be brilliant to be able to invest in Twitter, but just from participating, that's where it should have started. And that's what this represents. That's why what we do now is we use some of the old school techniques like participation, like here's the money flow. But again, remember, this was only a $25 million capital. That means you're effectively getting in on like a seed A round with people around the world tripping out on technology. That's so cool. Anyways, I wanted to go over that because I felt that the need to explain why some of these simple things play out and they can be so dramatically productive is because to play in the venture capitalism space, to be able to get early entry into something like potentially like Twitter makes you an enormous amount of money, and you didn't need a lot in there. Everybody could have participated in Twitter instead of before it hit the IPO stage, and then you know what I mean? It's been in the hands of the venture capitalists. Sushi was exciting because it takes it out of the hands of the venture capitalists and it tries to put it back in the hands of the people, which is what Bitcoin was always about. It wasn't about big hedge funds, and it was a solution to a problem. And we need many solutions. So I'm really excited about this space in general because of how it offers the ability for anybody with an internet connection and the extra participation time. Let's put it that, the time to participate in the growth of these ecosystems and these communities, that they're rewarded for it. They don't have to get kickbacks from governments, from taxes, from the building of these things. They get rewarded instantaneously from participating in the system itself. So I'm wildly excited about that. I just wanted to share that, and hats off to Chris and Robert for sitting down and trying to help catch me up with like at least the conceptual part that I needed, because I'll never understand how the tech works, but if you can explain it to me like that, oh, beautiful. Yeah. Okay. I see. I want access to proprietary deal flow. That's what's so cool about this. You don't need a bunch of money in any number of these. If you if you could just broad spectrum invest as a venture capitalist, even in general, it's actually a pretty good idea. You know, that you keep doing your normal hustle. If you like making tables, you got to provide value to the community. You just invest in more things. You invest with more people, and that's kind of what business always had been. It was building relationships for the community at large. So this allows us to do that again, and hopefully benefit more people as we grow these ecosystems, because there's been a big gap and disparity in between how those funds are distributed once they are distributed, because the big market hands that used to be causing these up and down moments, they can be caused by us now. We can be part of the movement. Wasn't possible before to get into a Series A and like chart it and stuff. This is a very unique advantage. So more than worrying about making money, really just trying to conceptually understand, I think what's happening here is one of the most profound experiences you can get from accumulation, distribution. These are big, simple games. And they produce a lot of benefit for participating. And now with this type of decentralization, this type of open source, hopefully we'll get closer and closer to a success where everybody benefits from the network effect and the growth of our society and a community as a whole. Anyway, so I want to leave it something like that. I know I went off on a total tangent here. But comparative strength here, guys, and Jesus, boy, I just went way out into left field. But I do feel I wanted to share that because I'm quite excited about this long term. As you come back into these regression lines, you look out, you see 2021, 2022, 2024, 25, right? This is not a short time frame potentially. Right? We caught the spring. Here's the box. We'll see some sideways movement. Think that apparently there's an election, right? Doesn't matter. The supply is going to do the same thing. These build pretty systematically. And again, we don't know how long they take. Sometimes it'll go in the face. It'll be in the middle of all the chaos and then Tron explodes. That was the prime example that macro doesn't make any difference. All of a sudden, Tron was the only thing going up, and by 100%. Well, you know what? The supply was gone, and the money was there. The money's always there. It's just about, is there supply in weak hands left? Is there supply in beginner hands, basically? So I hope some of this stuff has been really educational and helpful for you guys. We're going to be going over videos that talk more about how to use TradingView. Tonight, I guess, was also just a kind of a riff and a rant into the reason why I'm so excited about this space and what it offers, and really what we're witnessing here with being able to chart basically startup venture participation. It's just fantastically amazing. It means I think it means that we're at a new place in what this sector is capable of. And that to me is very invigorating. So get out there, whatever problems you guys see, if you think you can solve it, try help solve those problems. Because that's ultimately what I think we are good to be doing. It helps keep everybody busy, and it gives purpose to a lot of the work, right? So if you see something that needs to be fixed and you can fix it, try helping out. Which reminds me, thank you guys. I really appreciate all the support. If again, I think only maybe there's maybe 10 of you that didn't get your welcome emails or something. So if that's the case, please just email me, info@arcanebear.com, or any one of us will answer, and we'll get you in the channel. I'm not sure what happened. Something went wrong with the automation, because I'm not very good at doing WordPress stuff, and so thank you, and we'll see you guys again soon. Leave your questions, your comments. This is going to be a really long video, but I'm glad we got that out there. The DeFi space is fascinating to me. This whole sector is fascinating to me. I'm glad I get to share my excitement for it, not just from we can make money from this, but conceptually, this is really cool stuff. I think it's worth being in having a little bit of reverence for what we can do when we work together. Yeah. Oh wait, hold on.